Hello, this is Bob Gray Sr. Welcome to Ministry Moments. If you go to Ministry Moments YouTube and find Bob Gray Sr., then you can subscribe. That way you'll get this just automatically. And then if you want to go to Ministry Moments, solvechurchproblems.com, you'll not only get this, but you'll get a lot of other tools that I think might be of help to you. Also, if you go to Ministry Moments Podcast and find your favorite podcast supplier, you can find Ministry Moments with Bob Gray Sr. And then you may not see, we're here at 3:00 live Friday afternoon, every Friday. But this way you can get it and look at it at your leisure, at your schedule. Your schedule's busy, I understand that, but you can at least get it and plan to watch it on your schedule. All right. Well, boys and girls, today we're going to talk about successful pastors. Successful pastors. God has been wonderfully blessing our nation. It's been wonderful, And so happens that I was able to know Dr. Lee Robertson. I preached for him. He preached for me. We preached together. Dr. Curtis Hudson. What a great church that was in Forest Hills. And Dr. Tom Malone, 5,000 every week in attendance. Amazing man, amazing pulpiteer, amazing power of God all over. And Dr. Jack Hiles, my pastor, and God bless him. And these Lester Roloff and Carl Hatch and the great men. I preached for Lester Roloff. Lester Roloff preached for me. We just, the last sermon he preached on Sunday morning was in my pulpit. Entitled, his sermon was, "If I Had My Life to Live Over Again." Tremendous sermon. Went home to be with the Lord on Tuesday. But these were great men. And by the way, let me say this, they were successful. When Dr. Rice pastored, he was a successful pastor. Dr. Lee Robertson, a successful pastor. Dr. Curtis Hudson had the largest church in Georgia at one time, a successful pastor. Dr. Tom Malone, a successful pastor. And these were great men who were successful pastors. So let me try to give you some, and there's many others. Dallas Billington. I could go the BBF route and tell you about those men who were just tremendous pastors. Now, things that I learned from them and watching them and being a part of their world, and they were part of my world. Let me give you some thoughts. Number one, stay put in a crisis. Every one of these men had a crisis. But every one of them decided to stay through the crisis. In fact, Brother House would say often, spiritual boys, look, when you leave on top. Don't because there's something left undone or some battles, but stay put in a crisis. Dr. Tom Malone told me a story one time. He was driving, he pastored Emmanuel Baptist Church, Pontiac, Michigan, and he was driving by the church, saw all these cars. And he thought, well, I don't think we have a meeting scheduled. He said he got out, walked in, a bunch of men down at the altar, praying. He thought, isn't this wonderful? Praying for the power of God, praying for our pastor and our church and so on. He walked down the aisle very quietly. He said, I knelt down next to him, and the guy next to me, it's his turn to pray. And he said, oh God, kill Tom Malone. Get him out of the way. Just kill Tom. I said, what did you do? He said, I prayed, Lord, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. You think these guys didn't have problems? They had all kinds, just like you, just like me. Everybody had it. You don't leave at that point. If God leads you to leave, it'll be because you're on top side, not because you're on bottom side. Why leave a mess for the next guy to try to clear it up? So stay put in a crisis. Number two, dissolve doubts, do not create doubts. Dissolve doubts, do not create doubts. You remember what Satan, yea, hath God said, Genesis chapter 3. And Daniel was called a dissolver of doubts. You young men, be very careful. You haven't figured it all out yet. And for you to call a guy, throw me under the bus, and Brother Howell's old timers under the bus, say, well, we were just too rough. Now, this is the army of the Lord. This is boot camp. So listen, Brother Howell, you say it's a jungle out there, boys. And he was right. It's a jungle out there. And let the pastor toughen the people up. Let him toughen them up. I would never, I would act, not react. Because it's very easy if you're not careful. I don't think I haven't had pressure. You know, everything's fine when the kids little yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. But you let that kid turn to be a teenager, and all of a sudden he discovers he's got a mouth. You got yourself troubles. And if you succumb to that criticism of immaturity, it's not going to work out well for you. Not going to work out well. These parents of kids 16, 17, they dive out of church, dive out of the boat, and mom and dad jump out with them. That's wrong. Because let me tell you, about 3 years, that kid's going to get married and have kids. He ain't going to call you. He ain't going to check on you. They've got their own world. Not criticize them, just say they've got their own world. Now here you are. You jumped out of your church. Were you friends of a lifetime, church, and all you left your family, church family for a bit backslidden teenager. It's not going to be work out well. So successful pastors, they stayed put in a crisis. Number two, they were dissolver of doubts, not creator of doubts. I would never get up and throw the previous generation under the bus because I thought they were too hard. I wouldn't do it. We need to be hard. We need to be toughened up. Again, this is a boot camp, and the pastor knows what he's doing. You leave him alone. Number three, they see the best in people. These successful men of God see the best in people. See the best in people. I've seen a couple of terrible situations. Well, the house agreed to talk to him. He went to talk to him. And I would think, good grief, this couple, they're not in a world anything's going to come of this. And then I talked to Brother House, and he would say, there's hope, there's hope. He said, I believe we made some headway. And sometimes it's just a different voice that can make a difference. But number one, they stayed put in a crisis. Number two, they were dissolver of doubts, not creator. Don't create doubts, you dissolve them. In counseling, it's plus, negative, negative, plus. Plus, deal with what you got to deal with. When leave them with hope. All right. Number three, they see the best in people. The successful pastors, number four, were studious, not quick to answer. They would study things. They would think it through. Brother House was unique. It was just unique. He had that, what I call that domino effect in his mind. If whatever I decide here, boom, 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 and it's going to come back, kick me in the rear. I need to think this thing through before I do something. Sometimes we're too quick to act, and we don't know how it's going to come back on us one day. But you got studious. These great men were great thinkers. Curtis Hudson was very intelligent. Brother House was super, super intelligent. John Rice could have been president of the United States. John Rice was amazing. Not flappable. He studied things out. Read his books. His books are worth reading. Obviously, he pushed the amplified version. Well, you probably pushed the Living Bible. But number one, stay put in a crisis. Dissolve doubts, do not create doubts. Number three, they saw the best in people. Number four, they were studious. Number five, read the right kind of books. Read the right kind of books. When I talked to Robert Sumner about his attack on Brother Hiles, on his desk, he had John MacArthur's book open, sitting there. What was he reading? Somebody that said the blood of Christ dissipates at the foot of Calvary, hyper-Calvinism. That's what was catching his attention. The book was right there. And I said, you're attacking Jack Hiles, and yet this is what he said, yeah. He said, there's more truth in that book than what Brother Hiles gave in pastor school. And Robert Sumner pointed his finger at me and said, I'm going to shut your soul winning clinic down. I'm going to shut pastor school down. Well, it didn't work. Either one didn't work. Now, you got to read the right kind of people, read the right kind of books. Look to the end before hanging your, hooking your wagon up to their wagon, to the end of their conversation. Hebrews says it very clearly. So I want to make sure I'm not going to, if the Bible's down here, if you're here, Brother House had 20 years on me, 20 years. Here's the Bible. Here's where he was. I was back here. Well, I needed him, but if he had drifted far left and far right, didn't change the Bible, I'm still going in that direction. Everybody needs a coach. Babe Ruth had a batting coach. Tiger Woods had a golf coach. He should have had a marriage coach, but he had a golf coach. We all need somebody in the flesh, but if they step aside, you can keep your eyes on the scripture and obey the scripture. So we're talking about successful pastors. They stayed put in a crisis. They dissolved doubts. They didn't create doubts with their people. There was black and white. Number three, they saw the best in people. Number four, they were studious. Pause, tap the brake a little bit. Don't jump too quick. Number five, read the right kind of books. Look to the end before hooking your wagon to their wagon. Number 6, they look to the past for their future. Listen to Brother Howe's sermons, always talking about the past so he could determine the right kind of future. That's so important. Look to the past for the future. Don't look to the present for the future. We've got too much of that now, but look to the past for the future. Next, they prepared. Preparation was their middle name. They were prepared. And when we had our soul winning clinic, 3 decades, we had the soul winning clinic, hosted pastors all over the country and all over the world. Well, what we did was when we got done the next day, the next week we had our staff meeting, we wrote down all the pros and cons, what worked and what didn't work. And then we went from there. And by the way, it's not the end of the world. If somebody pulls a stunt at a conference, it's not the end of the world. Don't focus on that. I remember one time a good friend of mine got up and preached how the fallen angels had gotten women pregnant, and that's where the giants in the land came from. I'm sorry. I remember sitting on the platform thinking to myself, what in the world? Where did this come from? And everybody, all the preachers that were there kept looking at me on my chair, see what I was going to do. And so when he finished preaching, I got up and I said, well, I just proved one thing. We got to go soul winning. And then I dismissed it. Les Hobbins from Temperance, Michigan said to me, he said, man, I didn't know how you were going to get out of that one, but we did. Not the end of the world. Good grief. I've had people fill my pulpit and rip their britches, but it's the end of the world. I remember one time John Rollins was going to come preach for 1982. And Larry Smith, who was one of his preacher boys, who pastored in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I don't know if he was at the college or at Pine Bluff at that when this happened. I don't remember, but I know he called me. Larry Smith called me and he said, cancel that meeting now. Do not have him. He's changed. He'll make fun of your standards. He'll make fun of this, that, and the other. And I remember saying to Larry, I'm not going to cancel it. I said, first of all, if he does that, our people are going to look at him and say, well, that poor old man lost his mind. We knew what we believed, but it would affect us, didn't he? But I wanted to honor a veteran, and I did honor a veteran. And I believe God was pleased with that. All right, so successful pastors, they stayed in a crisis. They were dissolver of doubts, not creator of doubts. Number 3, they saw the best in people, salvaging people. They were studious. They weren't quick. They didn't react. They acted. Big difference. Then number 5, read the right kind of books. They read the right kind of books. Look to the past. Look to those who've been successful. But don't hook your wagon with somebody who's a peer level. They can't see any further than you can. Don't know any more than you know. They may be more suave than you and more personality, and they may have more money than you, but that doesn't make them more right than you. So they look to the past for the future. They prepare. Great preparation done by all those. My pastor school was well prepared for. Our soul winning clinic, a lot of work went into it. Last one cost me $85,000. The most boy, we had it. We had everything just exactly, crossed every T, dotted every I. Dress up, not down. We're in the day of the dressing down, the goatee and the untucked shirt and all of that kind of stuff. And a semblance of worship team. Don't call it that, because we don't want to be identified, but that's what they look like. But dress up, not down. Cut your hair, polish your shoes, and shave. Be consistent. I want consistency. I want consistency. Bell bottoms are in. I'm not in for it. Skinny jeans are in. I'm not in for it. Just stay the same. Stay the same. Stay the same. That's what the successful pastors did. Next, pray for power. All of them prayed for Holy Ghost power. Every one of them. The successful pastor, power of God, the power of God. Brother House carried that theme of the power of God in prayer after Dr. Rice passed and went to heaven. He kept it alive, and King James Bible issue alive when Lester Roloff died. And I'm grateful for that. All right, so number 9, they were separated from the world's standards. Whatever the standard was for the world, I just mentioned it. Bell bottoms in. Well, the house didn't have bell bottoms. Skinny jeans in. Didn't have skinny jeans. Guys like me can't have skinny jeans, but they're separated from the world unto the gospel. So they understood separation, Romans 1:1, separation from the world unto the gospel. You may be separated from the world, but not to the gospel. And thus you're not separated. It's two phases to it. All right. Then number 10, they produce baptisms weekly. Every one of these churches baptized every week of the world. They did. They produced successful pastors, baptized every week of the world. And in my years of pastoring, not one Sunday, I have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, not one Sunday did they ever go to church and not see somebody saved or baptized. Never, never. I remember one Sunday night, we had people saved, but we didn't have anybody baptized. The only time in all the years I pastored, 33 years of pastoring, only time. And let me tell you something, it killed me. I remember the next morning I got up and pouring down rain. And I wept that night. I wept the next morning. It was pouring down rain. I put sunglasses on because my eyes were pumping, crying. And I thought God had forsaken me. I really did. And so I went to the airport back then, a little puddle jumper from Longview would stop in Tyler and then go pick up people and then go to Dallas. And I got on the plane and sat down, seat 8A. That's my seat, exit row. I want to make sure I'm at the exit row. And I was sitting there pouring down rain, I had sunglasses on. It landed in Tyler. People got on the airplane in Tyler. A man sat in 8B and another woman sat in 8C. And I'm at 8A looking out the window, feeling sorry for myself, begging God, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. Now, don't forsake me, please, not now. And the guy was over here. I got sunglasses on. It's raining out. I'm looking out the window. He reached over and patted me on the knee. And he says, you know, Jesus can help you. And he handed me a gospel tract. The only time in my whole 76 years of existence has anybody given me the gospel in the soul winning atmosphere. And I said, do you think so? And he said, yes. And he said, are you saved? And I said, yes, sir, I am. He said, well, turn it over to Jesus. Jesus will help. Oh, man. Then he said to me, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a public speaker. I never did tell him I was a pastor. We're talking about successful pastors. I said, they stayed in a crisis. They dissolved doubts, did not create doubts. They saw the best in people. They were studious. They did not react. They acted. I mean, at the time, Brother Hauser tap the brake a little bit, back off before you decide to do something. Read the right kind of books. Look to the end before hooking the wagon up, whoever it might be. You better look at the end of the thing. How's this thing going to end up? That domino effect that I mentioned. Number 6, they looked to the past for their future. They prepared, great preparers. They dressed up, not down. They cut their hair, polished their shoes, and shaved, and so on. They prayed for God's power every day. They were separated from the world standards unto the gospel. They understood there was 2 faith, Romans 1:1, from the world to the gospel, not just from the world, not at all. Then number 10, they produce baptisms every week of the world. Every week of the world, they produce baptisms. I'm talking about successful pastors. I hope this has helped you. God bless you. Join us every week, would you? Ministry Moments YouTube, Ministry Moments SolveChurchProblems.com, Ministry Moments podcast, and you join us. And tomorrow's soul winning now. Time to get out, win souls, and pick your converts up for church. Don't expect them to show up because they received Christ. Does not mean they received character. And if they're used to sleep until noon on Sunday, they're going to do it again. So you make sure you pick them up and get them to Sunday school. And church starts when Sunday school starts.